agreeing to be on an episode. This is very early days. How long? I've been at A2X coming up 3 years, and you knew A2X long before that. Like, I remember, everyone's like, no, here's Jeri. And you were Which add-on at that point, right? So you're now Wow Connect. And so what is your background? Like, we'll get into it.
So essentially, I'm an accountant by background, an accountant by trade, and I trained at KPMG way back in 2002 was when I started my accounting career. But really, my journey into Xero and add-ons and cloud software and cloud accounting started in 2009, and I discovered Xero. So at the time, I had my own tax accounting firm and was starting up my own tax firm in Australia, and then Xero was the best way to sort of run my business back then as an accountant and help people with training and setup, etc. So from that point, I actually then sold my accounting firm into another sort of gold partner at the time that was one of the sort of pioneering Xero partners in Australia, and they purchased my accounting firm, and then I went and worked with them. So this was back when there was only 30 add-ons on the add-on marketplace, and it was just it's crazy thinking that now when there's over 1,000 on there now. So that's sort of how I got thrown into add-ons as early as 2012, and that sort of concept. So from there, I also got my first experience with inventory while I was there, because Unleashed was one of the add-ons that was around then. It was one of the only inventory add-ons. Then from that business, I actually then moved from there to Unleashed. So Unleashed asked me to come and work with them and help them set up their Australian arm of their business. And I spent a year with them as their partner enablement specialist, trainer. I wrote all the training manuals, support, basically anything and everything for inventory and Unleashed in Australia. So that's really my love of inventory came from. So from there, that then led to me becoming, starting, essentially Which Add-on a couple of years later with my husband, and was focused on sales training and assisting people with inventory system implementation. So it started out as like helping everybody with all the add-ons, because that's what my experience was prior. But then we were like, no, let's just focus on inventory, because there's so much to that, and more inventory solutions turned up on the market. And that was also my husband's background. He's a CFO and had already worked with franchises and implementations for big manufacturing companies. So we focused our strengths on inventory. So Which Add-on became then Wow Connect, focused on implementations of inventory solutions and their peripheral products like A2X and Starship It and all of the other automation pieces that come with a product-based business. That's what we do, and help people transition to those systems smoothly. And there's a lot of them, so we help people pick which one. So yeah, that's a bit of a background of where we got to from there to here. So
yeah, that's awesome. And were you ever intimidated by all the add-ons? I guess you've kind of always rolled with it, right? Like, been in the accounting industry, and then all of a sudden some people kind of almost fought it for a while, right? They were like, hey, no, this is, but you seem to have just like rolled with it. And
well, I always like a challenge, and I always love learning new things. I back in the very early days before we started Which Add-on, I had a business coaching course for other Xero advisors called Fast Track Your Xero Journey. And I was actually, because I'd fast tracked my Xero journey and gone from, a nobody to becoming a Xero advisor who was then training other people, I started teaching other people how to do that. And I was already teaching them back then how to even pick from the 50, 100 add-ons that were around, in that time. This was 2014 type period. So I was passing on to people the knowledge of what I did. And my biggest motto back then was never stop learning. It's still to that. Every single day we are learning something new with new clients, with new systems. It just never stops. So it's insane. So
of course. I mean, the integration kind of world and inventory, it's almost like just this massive beast, right? And the fact that you're kind of in there and understand so many of the different add-ons and what's available and what suits different businesses, because that's one thing. It's kind of not, do you find that it's not really one size fits all, is it?
Totally.
Yeah.
Especially one size fits all is not an option with inventory, especially because the different solutions have been bought and created out of different needs, and they've come from different founders, have different focuses, and the solutions, some are very focused on integrations and light on other features. Some are really focused on the heavy features inside the system and not worrying too much about the integrations, and others will be manufacturing focused versus inventory focused, or e-commerce focused versus wholesale focused. Like there's so many different elements to the inventory solutions, and some are small business focused, some are bigger business focused. There's certainly not one size fits all. It's the devil's in the detail. So
yeah, for sure. Cool. Hey, well, I just have like a few questions that I thought I could just ask you today, and we can have a chat. I want these to kind of, people to listen to these and actually like be able to learn something. Again, there's no e-commerce business is the same, and some people might be managing their inventory from their garage, some might have moved on, using Amazon FBA. There's so many, different things to kind of consider. But so first of all, let's just start with the basics. Why is managing inventory important? I mean, some people, I don't know if it's kind of like accounting where people avoid it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think people, the need to manage it becomes a necessity, I guess, with inventory. Otherwise, as with all accounting and cash flow and money, but generally it's, if you start getting customer problems if you don't manage your inventory right. So managing inventory, first of all, I think the most important thing is to view your inventory as money. It's just like you're literally buying something, and you might as well be wrapping up piles of cash and sticking it on the warehouse shelf, right? So first of all, think to make it important and make it, much more valuable for you to spend your time on, is to actually, first of all, just go, I'm going to choose to look at it as money. And that's not to scare you, but just to get your focus and go, right, this is why it's important, is because it's my money that I'm not using somewhere else, that I'm putting on the shelf, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that if people don't actually manage their inventory correctly, they are not going to give their customers a great experience. They're not going to be able to give the customers what they want. They're not going to be able to fulfill an order that's come in. They're going to run out of stock of the good stock that they have. There's so many different elements to that. So essentially, inventory is about actually customer service and being sure that they can actually make a successful business, a profitable business, and there's many layers to that, but a profitable business that can actually please the customers that are wanting to find their products. And inventory is the foundation of being able to do that successfully. So.
Yeah, okay, cool. And when it comes to kind of, I mean, obviously as an integrator, you are working with businesses at all kind of steps in their journey. Where do you find, like, what comes first? People sorting out their accounting, or they're sorting out their tax solutions or their inventory solutions. Do you have a kind of roadmap for how you would implement? Yeah, what would you recommend?
Yeah. Definitely. So the biggest thing we see, of course, is and we're just focusing on e-commerce, is that someone comes up with a fantastic idea of a product they want to sell. And more these days, there's the website with the 1 or 2 products on it that, that they just, that's the business, is 1 or 2 products, maybe 10, and then there's obviously sites that have thousands of products. So either way, with a particular business, it starts off with an idea, and that idea then will turn into a website. So people are going to start with a website. They're going to start with something like Shopify, or they're going to start with their product on Amazon. And that's the start. Then from there, usually if they don't have enough products that they haven't actually they either don't have enough products in their mix, or they don't have enough sales initially. They don't have an inventory pain straight up, because they just getting the business started, they're understanding what's going on, right? So in that particular case, if the product doesn't take off straight away, it's usually they're going to need the accounting sorted first. And cash flow and accounting come hand in hand. Accounting is just a reporting of what's happened, so you can project your cash flow, and reporting of what you've committed to, so you can work out what you need to pay for in the future. So that whole process of accounting and cash flow are essentially tied together. The inventory management can then often come after. For that type of business, the inventory management will come after, because they'll be like, okay, now we're making money. We've dealt with our tax obligations because we've made money. It worked. My idea worked. We've made money, but now we need to make sure that we do the accounting right, that we do the tax right. That's all sorted. Okay, now we've sorted that. Now we need to look at our inventory. That's a very common path. But sometimes people are going to have so many products and so much going on and not being able to keep up with customer demand and want to be able to spread their product lines out further and add further products. And those guys end up with an inventory problem pretty quickly because they actually are just growing so fast and there's so many things to manage that they need something to help them early on. But generally, the accounting will come first and then the inventory.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's super interesting because I guess as well, if they are making the products, right? So if they're making, say it's a cream and they've got to put, you know, different oils and acids and whatever. Yeah. So then that's a whole other beast, which I'm sure you also, and that would even, you know, spark problems even earlier on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, you go. No, I was going to say that's a really common need that people have. So in e-commerce, they're not usually manufacturing it themselves majority of the time, unless they're piecing together particular items in their garage, and and they're starting there. And I was even speaking to a client this week that makes a special electronic trailer part, and I was speaking to these two owners, and they're sitting there talking about their 20 staff in their warehouse with all their different warehouse operations. And these guys started out making it themselves. They're like, oh, we haven't made it before. And the husband and wife used to make it in their garage many years ago. So anyway, it's amazing seeing how everyone grows and progresses. But with e-commerce, people are contract manufacturing. And what that means is that they've got the product idea, and sometimes contract manufacturing or purchasing, they're just going and buying the product. It's already made and they don't have to worry about it, right? So that's obviously just importing or buying, purchasing. But then there's the next level of product where exactly what you said, they might be buying the product from someone, but they actually have to also buy the supplies and send them to the manufacturer so the manufacturer can make it themselves. So example of a client that I'm working with at the moment, they make handbags, and there's a particular special rope that they use that's unique to their handbags, and they have to get those handbags, the special rope from Europe, and then get it to China to finish those guys to finish the manufacturing before it actually gets there. So they're an e-commerce business, but then they have this extra complexity of contract manufacturing. Another one is a client at the moment that does pet supplements, and they buy the pet supplements in bags, like they get made, and then they have to buy the labels and the lids and the jars. And this guy has 5 products, but he's got a massive inventory problems with his 5 products because he's got to worry about all these different pieces that they don't run out before they actually get there. So there's different tools for different needs based on how complex those things are. So it can get complicated pretty quickly if they're in those particular scenarios and not just buying and selling products, singularly.
Yeah, of course. And how many clients have you had that have come to you at Wow Connect and they've not done anything? So they're just like, look, we've got this idea and it's flying off the shelf or web, and they've not got anything sorted, and it's kind of like the wheels are going to fall off any moment, or they have fallen off. Is that common, or?
It's people that find us generally have an established system, and they're moving from an established system onto a new system. That is more common than not. But when saying that too, the systems don't necessarily mean that they have an inventory system in place. They just might have a really sophisticated spreadsheet system in place. So that's really common to see people still managing their inventory and their manufacturing on spreadsheets, and then needing to bring it into the system into that next level. So it's not, I often see big sites, doing a lot of sales, and I had the fidget spinners or yo-yos or whatever the new craze is, and I often sit there laughing watching my kids play with things and be like, bet you those guys have some serious inventory problems right now. Like, how do they do it? Because every kid in the world has that thing right now, or in Australia has that thing right now. No, not particularly, but I often think about those guys and wonder the pain they must be in. So.
I do actually wonder what people do without using like an inventory system or, an accounting system, or things that are going to help automate those tasks that are really time consuming and error prone. Is there a step in the way, like, is there a certain kind of step where businesses should be kind of looking to use an integrator or an inventory? Like, do you only work with large businesses, or do you find that smaller businesses benefit from this as well, and it's something they should kind of invest their money in?
Sure. I think it's pretty hard to sort of pinpoint in terms of the clients we work with as to their particular size, because, you know, we've got a client at the moment that has 80 users and 80 people
Right.
across the whole business, but they're a large manufacturing business. Obviously, most e-commerce businesses are not like that. So if we focus just on e-commerce, I would say that with e-commerce, you've got the ability to use these automation tools that and use software to be able to essentially stop you from having to get staff. In the past, if we didn't have these tools, the staff would have to be doing it for you. Even, for example, the bookkeeping requirements that it takes to do what A2X does, it's, you know, that's a person's job usually that we've automated through the system. Managing fulfillment, that can be automated further. There's a whole areas of the business that can be automated through these different tools. So for an e-commerce business, we can work with businesses that have 10 people, and we can work businesses that have one person. And there's some massive businesses in America that I meet that they're huge amounts of turnover, not that many products, and one guy's running it from his lounge room, selling to every state in the country. It's really common that I get to see the people like that. So it's not really the size of the business in terms of the people that are working in it, or even the types of things that business does. It really, for those people listening, it comes down to what pain points and do you have in your business, and what problems do you have now, and what do you foresee? And I think probably one of the largest gaps where people really get stuck, they get stuck on focusing on the inventory. They try to solve the inventory problem and just get correct inventory numbers, and then they stop there, and then they don't go the next step and automate their forecasting. And what I'm meaning by that is the biggest sort of purpose of an inventory system is to give you the right information to be able to make the right decisions that you need to make next, right? And forecasting is one of those ones. You need your past sales history to be able to project your forward sales history. You need to know how much stock you have and how much stock you've already ordered, to then work out how much more stock you need to go buy. And this is relevant to any product selling business. So for those guys that are wondering, you know, how can I, you know, do I need a system or not? Are you doing those things now manually, and are they taking you a lot of time and causing you a lot of pain? If they are, then the systems out there that can help you do it. And sometimes people might even just need a forecasting system without an inventory system, because they'll have a 3PL. We haven't really touched on that, but if they've got a third party warehouse and then actually manage the stock themselves, people think, oh, I don't have an inventory problem, but your actual inventory problem is working out what you need to buy next. And there's tools that can even like Inventory Planner that can even, you know, solve those problems too, even without an inventory system. If you don't need that itself, you know, as the base, because the 3PL is your system. So yeah, there's lots of areas to sort of look at, but I think it really comes down to forecasting and then working backwards from there. So
right, okay, that's so interesting. I guess that, oh, sorry, it is such a, you know, a huge topic, and obviously we're not going to be able to cover everything today. And like, there's, you know, it's just like, hey, come on, let's talk about inventory. But I guess, you know, I want people to be thinking about inventory and that it, you know, again, not feel alone. A lot of businesses kind of reach this point in the road where they need to work out what tools they're going to use. Do you, so say someone isn't going to use an integrator because it's just not in their budget for their business. I know a lot of inventory solutions do have a kind of that onboarding kind of experience, and you can kind of go into different marketplaces and compare what's right for your business. Do you kind of have some top inventory solutions that you would kind of recommend depending on size and or what they're trying to achieve?
Yes. Yeah. So we use a lot of the inventory solutions that are in the Xero ecosystem. So our top three at the moment are Deer Inventory and Locate Inventory. There are two major ones. Deer Inventory is an Australian product, and Locate Inventory is a US product. So we also use Sin7. We also use Unleashed. We don't implement those as much as the other solutions. We just find that Deer and Locate suit people a lot more across the different features that they have. I won't go into the different reasons why, because that's a whole nother conversation on its own, but they're the two major solutions. And then when people have outgrown Xero, and that is something that you can do, but it's more something to do with wholesalers. So this is probably an important point with for e-commerce people, because I see this happening all the time, is if you're an e-commerce business and you don't have an inventory system and you don't have A2X yet, what a lot of people do is they connect up their e-commerce site with Xero. and they actually push every single transaction from Xero from Shopify or the website into Xero. And what this does is, if you have consistently have more than 1,000 invoices per month pushing into Xero, one day your Xero file will just stop working. And I don't know if you guys see this very often with your customers, but essentially A2X solves that, because because A2X will batch your transactions for the whole day based on your payouts. So the detailed sales don't come across into Xero one by one anymore. Or if you have an inventory system, and you can use an inventory system with A2X, and again, whole nother conversation as to how that technically works, but an inventory system needs all the individual orders too, in order to be able to get you to fulfill it and record what you've sold and what's going on. But then you can stop the inventory system from pushing individual orders across into Xero. And that is essentially batching it in a similar way to A2X. Or if you use A2X, you don't have to push that information across. And you end up with a lot less transactions inside Xero. So I've seen quite a number of people that come to me that want an inventory system, and they're coming to us for the inventory system reason. But then when we realize how many transactions they're putting into Xero, literally what happens is you can't run a report anymore. I've had people not be able to do their BAS because the system just can't handle that many transactions. So just be aware, when you're starting out with e-commerce and starting out with Xero, you need tools like A2X or an inventory system or both to be able to take the brunt of your data, not end up with every individual transaction in Xero. The only time you want every individual transaction in Xero is when they're unpaid wholesale orders. So you might have lots of e-commerce orders and then decide to double a bit in wholesale. Those ones you want to land in Xero because they're accounts receivable, they're people you've got to chase money for, because you usually give them terms. But anything that is paid, don't let it go into Xero, because it will literally break your Xero file eventually, or your QuickBooks file eventually, if that's the case. So that's something to just to be aware of for people that haven't reached that point yet. But back to the solutions, Deer and Inventory and Locator are two major solutions, both very suitable for e-commerce customers, and have a great connection process. I would say Sin7 as well is another one that is very good for e-commerce customers, and they have a lot of other integrations as well. It just depends on the size of your business and the complexities of your business as to which one of those suits best. So.
And I know we kind of touched on this before, and you were kind of like, it just depends, when are you kind of reaching these pain points, but when do you kind of see that, because a smaller business, like I always like the idea that, you set your systems up before it becomes a mess, right? Like you've got everything, you've got all your ducks in a row, so that when you do scale, and then when you do start to build everything, you're not actually trying to fix all of these problems and put fires out. So would you, do you see people that kind of are setting them all up at the same time when they actually open on Shopify? Or do you think that you can kind of manage, and then kind of maybe 6 months down the track, what would you kind of recommend there?
Yeah, very rarely do we see people coming to us with complete, from scratch, want to get everything sorted. It's usually always from a pain point of view, in that they've started having problems with it. Yeah. So one of the reasons for that is inventory solutions are not cheap. So I think the cheapest on the market is around $200 a month for solutions where you're actually managing inventory. There's order management solutions, which when you have a 3PL, they can sort of push your data in and push it back out again, and manage those connections. But if you're actually trying to manage your inventory, manage purchase orders, manage your forecasting, etc., you're looking at between $200 and $300 a month minimum for an inventory management solution, even if you've only got 1 or 2 users. And a lot of the light versions of the solutions are pretty much useless. It's usually the second one up from the light, like the next that is helpful. So that's one thing to be aware of, and that's a major reason why you don't see startups going and forking out $200 to $300 a month on an inventory solution that they don't feel any need to have yet, right? So that would be the first thing. The second thing is, if you just have one sales channel you don't, and one warehouse, you don't really have that many problems. As soon as you add on 2 sales channels, you're now having to manage that. And that might just be Shopify and Amazon. And if you've got 2 sales channels, you've now got 2 different sets of data that you're trying to work out. You don't want to have to go into Shopify and get your sales report and go into Amazon and get your sales reports and try and work out what you've sold. You're best having one place to filter all that information in. So we've had people in the past that only have a handful of products, but they sell on 2 different platforms and they're already in trouble because of that. The third reason I already touched on was contract manufacturing. So if you've got any kind of level of manufacturing, even if it's just you sourcing some products and sending them to your supplier, that can really cause some problems and cause delays in your products if you do that. So there's that. And then just growth. Any growth, you're going to hit it. You're going to know when you start having those problems. And sometimes people don't realize they're inventory problems. They think there are other problems in the business, like I mentioned before, customer service, not charging enough. That's probably one thing to make clear about an inventory management system is it's not just about inventory and like physical stock levels. It's always also about stock values and landed costs and truly understanding what your profit margins are and which products are making the best margins and which ones aren't, and your rate of selling them, all of that stuff. An inventory system does much more than just track stock levels. It's all about the profitability of your business through looking at obviously your core products or your base, your core of your business, which is products.
Yeah, totally. And I guess, you're saying they're not cheap, $200 to $300 a month, but if you are using them properly, like you said, and using them to your benefit, right, you're going to get that money back and more. And that's, so it's kind of not,
a lot of people don't see that though. A lot of people don't see that. So now there was 2 other things you mentioned. One was sort of with the onboarding process. How do you successfully go through an onboarding process if you don't have an integrator? So I apologize, I didn't answer that.
No, that's okay.
If you don't have an integrator and you go through the onboarding process yourself, take your time. It's not something you can do in a weekend. Give yourself at least 2 weeks to go through the things properly. But most importantly, actually test your workflows through that system. So you should be doing this before you choose a system anyway, because as I've said before, the devil's in the detail. You really need to understand your business, what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to get out of it. So before you even open a system and try and look at it, brainstorm what it is that you do and what you want the system to do. And don't just think because the website has a few tick boxes that says it does something, that it does it the way that you want it to do. Actually think about what your workflows are, then go into the system with a trial and actually practice it, do it yourself, see what it looks like, ask the questions of support, really go through your workflows and see how it works for you, because that's when you're going to work out if it's the right solution or not. Then when you've chosen the solution, go back through those workflows again, make sure you've got complete data. Don't just put basic stuff in there, because if you put basic stuff in there, then you start using the system, then you're going to have to start manually doing stuff anyway. So as an integrator, it's our purpose to help people go through that process and handhold them to get all of their data and do all the processing for them so that we get it set up to its optimum level the day they go live. That's the idea. When you do it yourself, just take your time, give yourself at least 2 weeks minimum to really think about it properly, practice using the system, see how it works, test things, and then you'll be doing it. A lot of people just think you can do it in the weekend, which it doesn't work that way.
And then again, if you are going to start using different add-ons, that's when it's just because you need them all to be working together, and you don't want
correct
to make yep. And that's where you come in.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. I mean, we've kind of touched on what the benefits are of having good inventory and management. Is there anything else that you think would be pretty quite practical for e-commerce businesses to?
I think going back to one thing you said right at the beginning was that inventory is, a bit scary and accounting's a bit scary and it all feels a bit too hard, but you can't avoid it. You can't avoid either of those 2 things. The other thing that inventory and accounting is it's not sexy, and it can be seen as boring and confusing. And it doesn't have to be. I think that's something that I really want people to understand. If we just focus on the inventory itself, it is just about the movement of stock. It's stock that's coming in, it's stock that's going out, and it's stock that's moving around. So don't be afraid to take it seriously and to look at it properly, because a lot of the problems can be solved. It's, you know, but you've got to look at every bit of detail. The incoming stock is not just purchases, it's returns coming back to you too. The outgoing stock is not just fulfillments and stock going out. It's other stock that's coming, that's going out because of manufacturing or contract manufacturing or whatever else is happening in your business, packaging, whatever's happening in your business. If there's elements to it, but there's not that many elements, right? It's just take your time, understand what's going on in the business. My number one golden rule with successful inventory management is understand and then mirror what's going on in real life in your system. If you do that, your system will be right, and it will give you useful information that you can actually use to make decisions on what to buy next and what to not to buy and what to sell and what to discount and, you know, what to price, all those things. It will help you. So don't be afraid to break it down, take your time, because it is not that hard if you understand and you break it down. So hope that helps.
Yeah, that's so great. And yeah, I know we've just kind of scratched the surface here, or haven't scratched the surface, but no, hey, thank you so much for coming on here and talking to everyone and about inventory and where to kind of start and when they should kind of consider looking at inventory solutions. And if anyone does actually need an integrator or want to get a whole lot of different systems working for them, definitely check out WOW Connect, which is WAOconnect.com. And yeah, and you'll be in very safe hands. And yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ellen, for having me. It was really fun. So,
awesome.
Thank you.